Okay, you're live.
Live Senate Transportation Committee. We have with us Mr. Coda, representing the Vermont Car Dealers Association. He's going to talk to us about some stats and the Vermont vehicle. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Yes, for the record, Matt Cotto with Meadow Hill on behalf of the Vermont Vehicle and Automotive Distributors Association, also known as VEDA. Quarterly, we put together the Vermont Vehicle Index, which shows what cars, trucks, and vans, SUVs and CUVs Vermonters are registering. So they're buying and registering them. They may have bought them in a different state, but they're registering them here as new to them.
Is this something that Meadow Hill does or that VEDA does?
So Meadow Hill gathers the data and publishes the data on behalf for VEDA using data from Experian AutoCount, which is a national company that gathers information on sales. Just a quick background on VEDA with 145 members. 2/3 of them are new car, franchise car dealers. 20% are non-franchised, also known as used car dealers or motorcycle dealers, and then 14% are associates. So in terms of sales, in terms of new and used vehicles registered in Vermont, purchased anywhere in the world, but registered here as new to them, we're up slightly from where we were last year. There's over 100,000 new and used vehicles are registered in Vermont, and the most popular car is not a car. Cars only represent 1 out of every 5 vehicles that are registered in Vermont, and in a state with more dirt roads than paved roads, you can understand why people prefer to have more elevation, and that's why SUVs, CUVs, wagons, trucks, and vans make up 4 out of every 5 vehicles on the road. If you go to the top 20, these are new and used vehicles by make, again from Experian AutoCount. These are registered in Vermont in 2023 as new to the owner. And you can see the usual suspects.
New and used.
So do you happen to know how this compares to other states? Like that clearance question, is that the same kind of along the whole northern tier of the country, or we don't?
I can't say with any definition where we rank versus other states, but clearly if you just watch what the manufacturers are producing, they're responding to consumer demand, and consumer demand is for crossover and sport utility vehicles and fewer sedans. So,
but in some parts of the country, it's not for clearance reasons. It's just style
That's
or
very true.
desire.
That's a good point.
Oh, I would think our pickup truck market would be
Yeah, I would assume
somewhat stronger here than
in any
Florida.
place.
You started saying our pickup. I said, you got pickup too?
I do have, well, my son, well, sort of, I have it.
We know who paid for it.
He has a, what's it called?
Okay.
So when you look at the new vehicles registered in Vermont, purchased new, registered in Vermont 2023, the gasoline ethanol blends are going down. By the way, starting in July 1, as you remember from previous iterations of DMV, I believe it was the DMV miscellaneous bill, they're going to start collecting data on fuel sales in Vermont, breaking out the different types of fuel type, renewable fuel type. And I know Senator Pershula and I have talked about that oftentimes. So we're going to know more definitively starting July 1, because it'll be collected on the tax form, how much ethanol is sold in Vermont and how much biodiesel is blended into the diesel supply in the motor fuel.
They will be able to.
That will be starting collecting July 1, which I think is a positive development to ascertain exactly how much renewable fuel we're selling.
Mm-hmm.
But gasoline ethanol blends for new cars is 78%, because we've seen increases in new car sales when it comes to electric, gasoline electric hybrid, and gasoline electric plug-in. And the VEDA members, the new car dealers, have had to make significant investments, understandably, in order to sell battery electric vehicles. That includes ensuring that there are chargers on their facility, either because they're required to by their OEM, their original equipment manufacturer, or GM, or just because they recognize you can't sell an electric car if it doesn't have a full battery. But those are investments that vary depending on the dealership, depending on how many fast chargers they put in, depending on what the requirements are from their OEM, and depending on how far they are away from three-phase power and the time and the labor that it takes to put in those facilities. But over $20 million in investments by Vermont auto dealers to be ready for the transition to battery electric vehicle sales. That's significant.
I'll just say, since we're not sharing the screen, that if anybody is watching this and wondering what we're looking at, if you go to our transportation webpage, under Matt Coda's name is this slide presentation for today, under today.
So how do we do in 2023 in terms of battery electric vehicle sales? These are no gas engines, aren't hybrids. These are pure battery electric. Well, 2,316 new electric vehicles were registered in Vermont in 2023 by Vermonters. I said the top 11. I usually do the top 10, but top 11 because coming in at 10 and 11 are exactly the same. The Ford Mustang Mach-E and the Nissan Ariya, both at 78. Tesla Model Y, still the largest seller, followed by the Chevrolet Bolt EUV.
Which is being discontinued
The Volt.
and replaced?
There's there's probably a lobbyist from General Motors in the building, but I believe the EUV is still going. It's the other one, correct?
Right, and there's I saw it formally announced,
So you have to introduce yourself.
Justin Johnson, representing GM. There, it hasn't all been laid out, but it's likely to come back in 2026 or 2027 model year on a different platform because it's currently built on an old platform. The new platform, which is called the Ultium platform. The plan is to move it to that new platform.
And if you talk to any auto dealer, I would say most auto dealers will tell you the state programs, not in conjunction of the federal incentives and the state programs, they do work. They do drive traffic, no pun intended, to the dealerships to purchase these vehicles, given the incentives that are available. And that's why you're seeing that investment. There wouldn't be that type of investment in infrastructure, private investment in infrastructure, if there weren't the demand.
So on the chart on the electric vehicle market, we've kind of put together pure EVs as well as plug-in. So the 6.1% here on this slide here does not include the plug-in. If I'm reading correctly, this is just pure battery electric. If we were to add that percentage, we must be creeping up to the 12%, or, I mean, part of what we're looking at is sort of what is the take-up rate, and because we're dealing with how we replace the revenues that these vehicle owners would have contributed to the transportation fund. So if it's 6.1 already in 23, and that was only 11 months, right? We had another month in 23, is that right?
No, this is all of 2023.
Oh, it said 11 months, though, estimated on 11
Oh,
months.
sorry, that's from a different data source. That one.
Yeah.
I think to answer your question, Senator Kitchell's on the slides before that,
Oh,
you'll get the gasoline electric plug-in at 4% and the electric at 6%, so we're at 10% that there's
okay.
But to clarify, these are cars or trucks or vehicles purchased and registered new in Vermont in 2023. It doesn't include something that was purchased and registered in 2022 and still bought with a 2-year
Right.
registration.
This
So
is
the
about-
additive. We're
Right.
we're more to 12,000 in terms of battery electric.
But at one point, people were saying, well, we'll know we're kind of getting there when we're at 10 or 15% sales.
We're at
Well,
10 now, then?
I'll show you. I'll
Plug-in?
show you that's the next slide for coming up. But just briefly to talk about, we still have, remember, 2/3 of the vehicles sold are used.
2/3 are used.
2/3
All sales.
of our sales are used vehicles. And new car dealers sell used cars. And in that, gasoline is 92% of the market. Battery electric is smaller, but it will grow. But this is a really important point to consider as we think about the transformation. If we just focus on new cars, we're not going to get there. Cars need to be recycled into the market.
Well, I think we're seeing that in some of the other programs we're putting more monies into. We just put another $1 million into, I confuse all the accounts that we have, but that was helping to sell more efficient used cars to people of lower means.
Right. Used or new, yeah.
Mileage smart.
Yeah.
It works. So this slide, the next slide, how many vehicles does Vermont need to electrify? Borrowed from Vermont Agency of Natural Resources and Dave Roberts at DIC. But I think it's instructive. It shows you where we're at now and where we need to be, where the the Climate Action Plan has us modeled in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions commensurate with the mandates in the Global Warming Solutions Act. But that's parts of Vermont policy based on GWSA. And then if you flip the page, you'll see.
We're at 10,916. It kind of goes to Chindan's old question about how many.
But not everyone registers every year.
Okay.
You can get a 2-year registration.
You know that this number is definitely in registrations and not necessarily how many electric cars we have?
No, this comes from ANR, and it was my understanding, I can clarify, but it was my understanding that this is the number of battery electric vehicles on the road today, not.
Registered in Vermont?
Yes,
Okay.
registered in Vermont, but they may not be registered every year. So if you were to attach a fee to that 10,000, not everyone may only get half of that, or you might get a third. I don't know.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
And then, of course, there's the mandates in the Global Warming Solutions Act that is driving policy to encourage battery electric adoption. And then you have the Advanced Clean Car Regulation passed in December 22 by Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, which requires the auto manufacturer to deliver into Vermont new cars that are battery electric or plug-in electric hybrid, not gasoline hybrid, but plug-in with gas. In greater numbers. So if you just take out the hybrid, the gas electric hybrids, no plugs, that's only 8% of the market share right now of new vehicles. So by 2026, the requirement in the Advanced Clean Car Regulation is 35%. That's a chasm for us.
As California, right? It's because we've piggybacked on the California.
Yeah, there's about a dozen states that have followed suit, and that is getting to 15% is going to be, we can see it. I can see it at the end of the table. Getting 15% is there in terms of new car vehicles in
Because
Vermont.
the clean car rule is on sales.
Yes. Well, it's delivered. The clean car rule is the auto manufacturers have the mandate to deliver into a CARB state like Vermont in these percentages.
Each state. So
If you're a CARB state, the OEMs are required to deliver to Andy's car lot or Cody Chevrolet vehicles that meet the mandate, which is a plug-in gasoline hybrid or a battery electric vehicle.
it's a state by state. It's not by manufacturer. So they can't just like sell them all in California and say we meant it. They have to do each hit that percentage for that state, but not for each dealer.
Correct. Delivered to a CARB state. So yes, could you have a situation where one Chevrolet dealer has a different ratio than the other? Yeah, all that is going to be worked out between the dealer and the manufacturer. And the manufacturer has different ways of complying with the CARB rules. One is to make an alternative compliance payment fee in lieu of, which then goes into so there's a lot of things that are a lot of unknowns here, but really the focus that I would hope to bring to this is that there is, while we are making steady progress toward that 15% number, to get to that 35% number in the next 2 or 3 years is going to be a challenge.
Doesn't seem like it.
And there are going to be repercussions of that. And so I suspect in future legislative sessions, we'll talk about that and what that means, depending on what happens there. But
And it could be, if California was to have the same issue, which I don't know, I know most electric cars sold in America are sold in California, but if they were to change the rule, because automatically change it for the other CARB states, or do we have to like re-adopt their changed rule?
it's my understanding, although I'm not a lawyer, that if they change their rule, then we would go through a similar rulemaking procedure to adopt our rule to
We
reflect
just
theirs.
went through rulemaking to
Yeah.
adopt them.
Their change, yeah. Okay.
And then, of course, there's the Vermont Advanced Clean Truck Rule. Some states have adopted the first, but not the second. We adopted both in December of 2022, which requires an increasing amount of truck dealers in Vermont to receive from their auto manufacturers electric or low carbon or zero emission vehicles.
You said the alternative compliance fee. Do you also anticipate OEMs possibly, just to keep their proportion lower, just limiting the amount of vehicles they sell into the state in order to meet that 35% so that they don't create a lower percentage?
Change the denominator? Don't know. I couldn't speak to that. I do know that when we changed the emissions rules to eliminate the amount of particulate matter that come out of the tailpipe, in New Hampshire didn't. There was the thought that, well, New Hampshire, because all these cars were shipped to the Northeast, New Hampshire will get the clean cars even though they didn't mandate it. And I think that was largely true. I don't think that's going to be the case with this. I think there will be the situation, New Hampshire not adopting the CARB standard, the California standard, that if you want a larger choice of electric vehicles, if you live on the river, you're shopping in Vermont. If you want a greater choice of combustion vehicles, well, you're going to the eastern side of the Connecticut River. You can see that scenario playing out. And for a dealer who has in both states, more easily move vehicles in between. All these things are going to be very interesting to track, and they have implications that I haven't quite sussed out. But people are trying to figure out how this transformation happens. And then finally on the gasoline diesel sold, you may have gotten something similar. This is just what Meadow Hill publishes. This is the last 6 years. This is our sales. Our sales are slightly up of gasoline in Vermont over last year, but the trend is it's thrown off by 2020, right? It's thrown off by COVID, because that was the year we stopped driving, we stopped going to work, we stopped going to school, and the numbers dipped. So, but if you look at where we were in 2018 to where we are today, gasoline sales are down 9%. And that's 33 cents a gallon for every gallon that we don't sell here that doesn't go into the transportation fund. So 30 million gallons, which is our drop, that's $10 million roughly.
That gets back to my earlier comment about the erosion of our tax base.
Yeah.
I mean,
In a way, it's what we want.
it is, that's my point, is it is what we want, but we have to recognize that if that's our policy, what is the revenue impact, and how do we anticipate it and redefine our revenue base?
I don't know that we need to wait to the number that was put out there when we already see the trend is going to. I think the reason why we're waiting before is to see if we were going to see a trend. We see a trend now.
Well, it's to encourage the take-up, but I think maybe the adoption of the California rules is going to be a big impetus as well in this.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that the 9% reduction we can't attribute entirely to better electric vehicles.
No,
Vehicles are
no.
getting higher gas mileage as we
No, we know that.
retire
I see
old.
that.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's what, again, we're waiting for a trend to see. But
Yeah, well,
we're seeing it.
in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
um,
Everything adds up.
2 million adds up, right? When it's 20, when you've got an 80-20 match or a 90-10 match.
Absolutely.
And then just the last two slides, just our snapshots of the 2023 economic impact study that Veda had Auto Outlook Incorporated put together. And the key takeaway here is that the average Vermont dealership paid more than $3.5 million to its employees, including fringe benefits. There's total employment of 3,210 Vermonters who are employed by the car dealers. But if you add in all the ancillary industries that are Vermonters, we're looking at 6,200 employment resulting from auto dealerships. That's 17% of the retail employment.
I don't think when we talk about economic development, we talk about the business sector and so forth. I don't think there's really much recognition of the within the labor market, the number of employees involved here.
So I was kind of surprised on the associates on the data. There was only 14%, because they're, you think of all the parts stores, you think of everything that's out there that's they're getting supported by the auto industry, and you would think that they'd have a bigger, the business community would be a bigger part of that.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator.
This page though is just based on new vehicle dealers, not even the used, right?
And there are far more,
Used.
4X used vehicle dealers. Remember, if you just sell 12 vehicles in Vermont, you are required to get a dealer license, and that's your permission to sell vehicles, which segues very nicely into the next bill. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the Vermont Vehicle Index before I start talking about S210.
Just the total jobs, the 6,200, that's direct jobs. That's not indirect benefits from the
Total employment from auto dealerships, so that includes, as I understand it from our economists that we hired, employed due to the indirect impact of dealership operations. So that includes like parts stores, parts stores. If you touch a part or it's a piece of equipment before it gets to a new car dealer.
Not like gasoline, not like.
No. Oh, that number is much larger.
Okay, I don't,
So,
yeah, we'll look more closely on, thank you.
so Veda, Marilyn Miller used to come in. Are you, does the association still have an executive director, or have they simply contracted that work to you? I'm just wondering,
Question.
are you the new Marilyn here?
So I am the new Maryland,
Okay.
and I'm still the old Matt too. So
Well, good. I was just wondering how the association relative to your larger business was fitting. So,
so there's a nonprofit complex up in Berlin where the Vermont the Central Vermont Chamber of Commerce is located over by the hospital.
right.
And so the Vermont Grocers is there, Vermont Specialty Foods, Vermont Fuel Deal Association, the Heating and Cooling Contractors of Vermont, the Vermont Auto Dealers,
And
Ticket
so
Fund, we're all in the same,
You're in the building.
and we all work together. And Beta has an excellent office manager that handles all of our insurance issues. We have an association health plan with over 1,000 Vermonters who are enrolled in that program, as well as life, dental, disability that we're essentially the insurance provider for new car dealers in Vermont.
Or you can sign up to the state paid family leave plan. The governor is now making available to others.
I can't comment.
Well, we hope more people sign up.
Yeah.
But not a transportation issue.
No.
Okay, do you have a handout on the other stuff, or you're just gonna tell us?
Nice.
On S210?
Just a little show and tell.
And maybe, because it's been a while since we had an overview of SD10, so don't assume we know exactly what the sections are, what it says. You might have to remind us.
So if it's okay, I don't have an opinion on the bills other than sections 5 and section 6, which deal with the disclosure of gender type of crash test dummies requirement by the dealer.
Right, that's why since you're coming in, and I remember that was in the bill, that's why we wanted to keep.
And I'll just be upfront with the ask. We ask that if you pass the bill, that you eliminate or you delete sections 5 and 6 on page 5 and 6 of the bill. And I'd like to tell why, and I won't take more than 5 minutes of your time, but I didn't know anything about crash test dummies,
Well,
other than the 1990s band, when I read this bill for the first time. So I'm naturally curious, so I looked at my window sticker, and I said, because it assumed there's some sort of disclosure. I said, well, isn't there already disclosure? Isn't on the window sticker? And so I looked at mine because I keep all my stuff. And
Because that's what the bill does, would require the dealers to post on the sticker what kind of crash test
what you're
dummy.
saying it's already there.
so we have it, and so now these stickers are not a state mandate; they're a federal mandate. They're put on by the OEMs, by the manufacturers, by the Fords and the GMs of the world, and it shows you where this is my car, shows you where my car came from and where it was shipped to, the fuel economy. All of this is mandated, including the government's 5-star safety ratings. But it doesn't say anything about the gender of the crash test dummies, and I didn't even know. I was ignorant of it. So I looked at my thing that's on every single new car sold in Vermont, and I see, oh, I can call this number, I can go to safercar.gov. So I go to safercar.gov, and I learned for the first time that there are 10 different versions of crash test dummies that the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration requires the OEMs to test to ensure whether it gets a 5-star safety rating or a 4-star safety rating. And of those 10, there are 2 males, 2 females, and 6 children of varying sizes, from infant to a teenager, in different body types.
So what you're saying is declare a victory and go home.
Are you saying they have to do all 10, or they choose from the 10?
What I'm saying is I'm learning that the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, working with the manufacturers of vehicles, requires them to undergo testing of more than just one type and one gender.
But not all 10.
Well,
That's kind of what I remember the testimony is like. They choose which ones to use on the tests.
so then I read a GAO report from 2021, which you may have been referenced. cited, but it was fascinating. The General Accounting Office said that they think the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration should in fact include more than 10 body types. And I think that is a recognition that the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration should be doing more for safety. And that may be completely true. And the requirements that they put on the auto manufacturers here in the United States or foreign companies that want to sell their cars might be valid. I'm not denying that or disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is what this bill does is it has a hammer and the auto dealers are the nail. The only repercussion in all of this, we can't convince the NHTSA to do this. We can't convince the manufacturers to do this. But the only thing that the legislation does is takes away our ability to sell cars. We don't have a dealer license. We cannot sell cars. We don't have a dealer license. We lose our franchise.
Well, that's the penalty in the bill. Is
Yeah.
like if you don't post it, you get your license taken.
There is no penalty because they can't impose a penalty. They can urge the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration to do this, but they can't require them. They can urge the manufacturers to do this, but they can't require them. But they can take away our dealer license, lose our franchise, lose our business, lose our employees.
That's what the bill is.
Yes.
That would be the,
So I went from, I don't know anything about this to, oh, this is very interesting. Oh, I understand the debate. And then realizing what the bill does is say, a person shall not be able to register as a dealer in new motor vehicles.
If they don't.
So if someone sees this and says, this is the national standard, but there's not very specifications that the dealer provides on what the gender or body type is, someone could make a complaint and the DMV might be
would the
compelled.
dealer even know?
No.
And could the,
We are assuming that the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, in their regulation of the OEMs, are ensuring that these 5-star ratings or 4-star ratings are as accurate as possible. Maybe there needs to be 12 body types. I don't know.
and we could,
But to put the livelihood of a Vermonter in jeopardy because of the lack of disclosing whether it was 9 or 8 or used, I'm just flabbergasted at how.
I think they thought that they could find out and then they would, I guess, post it. But I think the bill says on that sticker, but so like the dealer can't change that sticker, so they'd have to have their separate sticker that just said, we looked it up. And this is which crash test dummies were used when they got their rating.
And that is on the sticker. If you go to the website, you can see, I can show you. I have
Is it
pictures of the crash test dummies.
Does it say per vehicle? Like, did you look up your vehicle and find out which dummies were used?
No, because no, it doesn't say that. It just says, what are the standards that they use to test it? So I know that a 6-year-old weighted child, a 3-year-old child, a newborn infant, a 12-month infant.
But we're not sure if they use all 10 or they could choose to use some of them and
So
not others.
I don't, but
But the dealer wouldn't know. It's not the bottom
and
line.
if a dealer didn't know,
I guess what the bill would require is that they go look it up, I
But can we look it up?
guess. I don't know.
but if we can't compel a manufacturer, and the manufacturer can't necessarily compel the NHTC, National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, to deliver that information. To think that the only hammer in order to encourage this national safety organization
Right.
to reveal more information about the gender is to take away a Vermonter's livelihood is just not fair. It's not equitable.
And I think that the thought was that you could look it up. Like the dealer would look it up and say, oh, they use crash test numbers 2, 4, and 8. And so I'll put that on the sticker. If they use 2, 4, and 8, and then that would provide some kind of information. I think that was the intent, but I could.
The information provided by the National Safety Organization is far more would be more instructive than I think than any dealer could pin on the windshield.
How rude. I was a 6'4" male, who is not a normal body type. I would like to know if they, but I'm not gonna pass a Vermont law. I'm gonna call Becker Ballot and see if the feds can maybe do a better job of requiring disclosure of crash test dummy. So if it was a crash test dummy of my body type, I'd like to know that it's safer for 6'4".
So there's 10 types.
10 types, all can be accessed. This I printed out, but you can easily access it from your phone. It's all here on.
But what I'm struggling with, what I think I understand, yes, they have 10. We don't know which ones were used for that particular vehicle, do we?
I don't know enough about my cursory knowledge of the standards that they put in place. What I want to make, my point is to say that you can access this information on the mandated sticker through the national.
My only point is, this bill is possibly set aside the penalty, is asking a dealer to provide information that the dealer can't get.
Well, we're not
Because
sure.
maybe,
Might be able to
maybe
get it.
not.
Nor can we compel that information. We can ask for it
So you
nicely.
don't, so if Senator Chittenden went in, could he, by looking at that code, confirm that if he bought that car, it's been tested for someone
Like me.
like you? Because you're kind of a big, tall guy. And I imagine if you got hit, you'd probably move forward with a lot of force.
And not all cars fit well for taller guys.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
thing.
hard on your knees and legs.
Exactly.
And that said, we're in the business of selling cars. If a very tall gentleman came in and said, I want to make sure that this car is safe for me, there's a way that you can get to that information so you can make a sale, and a good car salesman is going to do that. But to leave open the possibility that a lack of a specific detail on a window sticker could jeopardize the franchise of a Vermont car dealer seems to be
Extreme.
Right, especially if you can't get the data. There was a study done by Consumer Reports, looks like, called The Crash Test Bias, How Male-Focused Testing Puts Female Drivers at Risk, where they said there is a risk. So I think that the effort is to say, like, can we educate the consumers about that?
Yeah.
But if the national regs don't require them to list which dummies they use, then it's nothing we can really do about it.
Not disagreeing with the purpose or the intent, it's just,
Yeah.
it's the method that they've done it.
And the
that is
penalty.
proposed. The penalty is extreme in our point of view. So if you do pass the bill, I think you could absolutely pass something urging the NHTSA to do this, but to put the dealer's license and their franchise at risk, we respectfully ask you to remove sections 5 and 6. So.
Okay.
Bless you. Thank you.
I'm shopping cars right now, and I kind of want to know if they're testing it with a bigger dummy.
So it's gonna be your daughter's car? Oh, no, you're gonna get your daughter here.
I'm gonna ask them that.
Are you buying a
Also
new
that-
car?
I'm gonna go 2 or 3 years old. I find it's the best value.
It's also a male bias.
Can you imagine going in there with a straight face and saying,
For
hey,
what?
For stab vest.
Come on.
That's not protected from the
How big
stab.
was your dummy?
how big is your dog, huh?
You're a woman buying a stab vest, you should check out how it was tested.
What did they do with
What's a
the
stab
police
vest?
that got?
Stab vest protects you
A lot
from
of
being
stuff,
stabbed.
But those are
Never heard
Kevlar
of such a
vests.
thing.
Well, I assume that's what a stab vest is. I didn't read the art. Okay, so any other questions for Mr. Cota?
No, but I think you had to be somewhere at 11, didn't you?
Go next one.
All right.
Yeah, well,
I need-
we're done for the day, so you get an extra
No,
hour.
you're coming in at 11. You're my vice chair. We're doing